Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after trying to make everyone happy? You give your best, you go out of your way, and still, someone finds a reason to complain. You start questioning yourself. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I should have done more. But let me tell you a truth that hit me hard once. You can pour your entire heart into the word, and someone will still say it wasn't enough water. That's when I realized I wasn't tired because life was hard. I was tired because I cared too much about the wrong people, the wrong opinions, the wrong noise. So, my dear friends, let me tell you why caring less isn't about becoming cold or selfish. It's about protecting your peace. There are 7 powerful truths I learned that changed the way I see people, pressure, and purpose. And once you understand them, you'll never waste your energy on the wrong things again. The first key point is that caring too much makes you a prisoner of perception. Most people don't realize how deeply they build their lives around the eyes watching them. Every choice, every word, every post online becomes a silent question. Will they approve of me? And that's where the chains begin to tighten. Because when you start performing instead of living, you lose touch with the most important audience, yourself. You begin to adjust your laughter, your dreams, even your opinions to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You're not living anymore, you're auditioning. And the cruel truth is, the crowd you're trying to please will change their minds tomorrow, leaving you stuck in a cycle of never-ending adjustments. People often underestimate how much this invisible pressure shapes their lives. Think about it. How many decisions have you made not because you wanted to, but because you were afraid of how it would look? The outfit you wore, the career you chose, the post you deleted after checking who viewed it. You become a slave to perceptions that were never even yours. And over time, that slavery breaks your confidence in quiet, unnoticeable ways. You stop trusting your own judgment because your mind has been trained to seek confirmation before clarity. That's not living free. That's living trapped inside everyone else's version of you. But here's something most people never pause to ask: who exactly are these people we're so desperate to please? Half of them don't even truly know us. They see fragments, a highlight reel, a passing moment, a rumor, a version edited through their own fears. Yet we hand them power as if their opinion defines our destiny. We let their words pierce deeper than our own truth. And the tragedy, they move on in seconds, while we spend sleepless nights replaying their criticism in our heads. Caring too much about perceptions is like trying to control smoke. No matter how hard you try, it keeps slipping through your fingers. When you let perception rule your emotions, every negative comment feels like a personal earthquake. A stranger's disapproval becomes heavier than your own peace. You begin to measure your worth by the reactions you receive. If they praise you, you rise. If they ignore you, you crumble. And soon, your emotions are no longer in your hands. You've outsourced your happiness to people who might not even remember your name next week. That's the danger of caring too much. It teaches you to depend on the unpredictable for your sense of stability. Freedom begins when you stop begging others to see your light and start recognizing it yourself. The world has enough judges, but very few witnesses. People who simply observe, understand, and move on. You can't silence every opinion. You can't control every interpretation, but you can decide which voices echo in your heart. The ones that lift you, not drain you. The ones that challenge you, not cage you. When you start filtering what enters your inner world, life feels lighter. not because others changed, but because you stopped letting their noise set your rhythm. Remember, not everyone's perception deserves your attention. You can spend your whole life defending your actions to people committed to misunderstanding you. Or you can rise quietly and unapologetically above their noise. Caring less doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you anchored. It means your peace is no longer up for negotiation. You're no longer living to be seen, you're living to be real. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you'll wonder why you ever gave your power away to opinions that never truly mattered. The second key point is that not everyone deserves your emotional energy. We often grow up believing that being kind means being endlessly available, that caring means constantly giving, that love means self-sacrifice without limits. But that belief quietly destroys people from the inside, because while it sounds noble, it's actually dangerous when it becomes one-sided. When you care too much for those who give nothing back, you end up drained, confused, and resentful. You keep pouring from a cup that no one ever helps you refill. You confuse exhaustion for compassion, and slowly you begin to disappear in your own kindness. The truth is, emotional energy is one of the most valuable forms of currency you possess. It determines how you think, how you feel, and how you show up in the world. Yet we give it away like it's endless, to people who complain but never change, to relationships that take but never give, to conversations that go in circles. You keep showing up for people who would never do the same for you. And what's worse, you start feeling guilty for wanting to pull back. But setting limits doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started healing. Your peace deserves protection even from those you love. There's a silent truth that few talk about. Some people thrive on your attention, not your well-being. They want your empathy, your time, your listening ear, but not your boundaries. They'll drain you emotionally, not because they're evil, but because they haven't learned how to stand on their own. If you keep rescuing them, they'll never learn to swim. Your constant saving becomes their permission to stay weak. And so you end up carrying both your pain and theirs, thinking you're helping, when in reality you're just preventing growth. Theirs and yours. We often mistake emotional generosity for emotional responsibility. You are not responsible for fixing everyone's sadness, nor are you required to absorb their chaos. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back and let others face their storms. Because people don't grow when you carry them through every difficulty. They grow when they realize they must walk their own path. Protecting your energy doesn't make you unkind, it makes you wise. It means you've learned to distinguish between empathy and enablement. And that's one of the hardest, yet most freeing lessons in life. When you start valuing your energy, you become selective about where your emotions go. You begin to notice which conversations drain you and which connections inspire you. You start recognizing who listens to understand and who listens to respond. You realize that not every problem requires your involvement, and not every person deserves front row access to your heart. You start showing up intentionally instead of habitually. You begin giving your time to people who match your effort, respect your limits, and honor your space. Because in truth, real relationships are never one-sided. They're a balance of give and take. And as you pull your energy back from those who misuse it, something powerful happens. Your inner world becomes lighter, clearer, calmer. The noise fades. You start hearing your own thoughts again. You begin to feel peace where there used to be pressure. That's what happens when you stop overextending yourself for people who were never meant to carry your emotions. You realize your energy is sacred. It's not meant to be scattered everywhere. It's meant to be shared wisely with those who value it, respect it, and never take it for granted. The third key point is that the need to please is a silent form of self-betrayal. It's one of the most deceptive habits because on the surface, it looks like kindness. You say yes because you care. You stay quiet because you don't want conflict. You go along because you want peace. But deep down, every time you suppress what you truly feel, a part of you starts fading. The smile remains on your face, but something inside you starts to shrink. You become addicted to being liked, and that addiction quietly replaces your authenticity. You start shaping your personality to match other people's comfort, not your truth. You think you're building connections, but really you're building cages, one polite compromise at a time. When you live to please, you start confusing acceptance with love. You assume that if people are happy with you, it means you're valuable. But the truth is, you're only valuable when you're you. The problem is that people pleasing rewards you temporarily. You get quick validation, a smile, a compliment, and your brain starts to crave it. You begin to measure your worth by how easily you can make others happy. But what happens when their happiness comes at the cost of your peace? When you keep saying yes to things that drain you, just to avoid disappointing someone, that's not kindness anymore. That's surrender. You've traded your truth for approval, and that's a price too high for any relationship. The world subtly teaches us that being agreeable keeps the peace. But what kind of peace requires you to silence your truth? That's not harmony. That's emotional suffocation dressed up as politeness. You start holding your breath around people, hoping not to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, or upset the wrong person. You start apologizing for existing too loudly. And the saddest part, you forget who you are when no one's watching. You've spent so much time blending in that your reflection feels unfamiliar. People pleasing isn't about love. It's about fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being alone. But here's what's often overlooked. Every yes that betrays your truth silently teaches others how to treat you. When you make yourself endlessly available, people stop appreciating your presence. When you never say no, your generosity stops being respected and starts being expected. The moment you draw a line, they'll call you selfish. Not because you are, but because they were benefiting from your silence. People pleasing doesn't protect relationships, it weakens them, because authenticity is the foundation of every connection, and without it, everything you build eventually crumbles under the weight of pretense. It takes courage to unlearn the habit of pleasing. It means sitting with discomfort, saying no when you fear disapproval, and standing by your truth even when it shakes the room. It means realizing that being honest might cost you some relationships, but it will save you from losing yourself. You start valuing peace over popularity. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I respect myself right now?" That's when everything changes, because your self-respect isn't built on how others respond. It's built on how true you are to your values, even when no one's clapping. And the more you practice being authentic, the lighter life feels. You stop rehearsing your words before every conversation. You stop overanalyzing every reaction. You stop carrying the guilt of not being perfect in everyone's eyes. You realize that the people who truly care about you will never demand your silence for their comfort. They'll value your honesty more than your compliance. And those who can't handle your truth were never meant to hold space in your life anyway. When you stop betraying yourself to please others, you don't become harder. You become real. You start living for truth instead of applause. The fourth key point is that criticism doesn't always mean you're wrong. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that other people's opinions are the measure of our worth. So when criticism comes, we take it personally, as if it defines our identity. But here's the truth. Sometimes people criticize not because you're wrong, but because your growth exposes what they haven't faced in themselves. Your courage becomes their discomfort. Your progress reminds them of their stagnation. And instead of looking inward, it's easier for them to project outward. So they attack, mock, or question you, not because you failed, but because you dared to do something they didn't. The most dangerous part about caring too much for criticism is how quietly it shapes your decisions. You stop taking bold steps because you're afraid of being judged. You start censoring your voice, not because you've lost your opinion, but because you fear how others will interpret it. Every move you make becomes calculated, not based on your vision, but on their possible reaction. That's how dreams die, not from lack of ability, but from overthinking the opinions of people who contribute nothing to your growth. You give them power over your choices, and before you know it, you're living their version of your life. Criticism can sting deeply when it comes from people you respect. But even then, you must learn to separate feedback from projection. Feedback helps you grow, projection holds you back. Feedback points to the work, projection targets your worth. When someone offers criticism, ask yourself, is it coming from love or from ego, from understanding or from insecurity? Most criticism says more about the critic than about the criticized. People often throw stones not because you're doing something wrong, but because your light reminds them of the darkness they haven't faced within themselves. And understanding that difference is how you stay free. Think of how many voices you've allowed to echo in your head for years. A teacher's harsh comment, a friend's judgment, a relative's doubt, words that had no real foundation but still left deep marks. You started building your limits around them. You began believing that you weren't enough, simply because someone else couldn't see your potential. But the thing is, their perspective wasn't the truth, it was just noise. And the more you let that noise in, the harder it became to hear your own voice. The challenge is to reclaim that voice, to trust that your intuition, your effort, your purpose carry more weight than anyone's fleeting opinion. When you grow, you will naturally trigger reactions. Some people will celebrate your rise, others will resent it. Some will try to copy you, others will try to criticize you into shrinking. But that's how you know you're doing something worth noticing. The ones who never face criticism are the ones who never stand for anything. The moment you decide to build, to lead, to create, you become a mirror for others' insecurities. The stronger your light shines, the more it reveals. So don't take the backlash personally. Take it as proof that you're stepping into visibility. You're disturbing comfort zones. And that's what growth does. Criticism, when used correctly, can be fuel. It can refine your focus, sharpen your discipline, and thicken your skin. But when taken emotionally, it can paralyze you. The key is discernment, knowing what to keep and what to discard. Listen, learn, but don't absorb everything. You can acknowledge someone's opinion without accepting it as your truth. You can appreciate advice without shrinking your identity to fit their expectations. The world will always have something to say, That's inevitable. But the strength lies in staying anchored, knowing who you are, and continuing to walk your path, even when the crowd doesn't clap. The fifth key point is that caring less doesn't mean you stop loving, it means you start living. Most people misunderstand this idea completely. They think caring less makes you cold, distant, or heartless. But in reality, it's the opposite. It means you've reached a level of emotional maturity where your love no longer depends on approval, attention, or outcomes. You still care, but you don't cling. You still love, but you don't lose yourself in the process. You give without the silent expectation of being repaid. And that's the kind of love that's pure, not desperate, not draining, not performative but peaceful. Because real love is not about holding tighter, it's about standing stronger. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from overcaring, the kind that doesn't just tire your body but weighs down your soul. You wake up heavy, not because life is unbearable, but because you're carrying emotions that were never yours to hold. You're constantly worrying about how others feel, what others think, who might be upset, who might misunderstand. You start living life on emotional alert, always scanning for signs that someone might be disappointed in you, and that constant anxiety steals your presence. You stop enjoying the moment because you're always managing it. Caring less means releasing that invisible burden, not because you've stopped loving people, but because you've realized your peace deserves to exist too. When you begin to care less about things that don't align with your truth, something powerful happens. You start to breathe again. You begin to notice how quiet your mind becomes when you no longer chase validation. You start to see that peace isn't found in pleasing everyone, but in being consistent with yourself. You realize that you can still show compassion without bending your boundaries. You can still offer kindness without sacrificing yourself. Respect. It's not detachment, it's emotional clarity. You finally understand that you're not responsible for everyone's happiness, and that realization doesn't make you unkind, it makes you wise. It's important to understand that love without boundaries turns into self-neglect. When you constantly put others before yourself, you send the message that your needs don't matter. And people start believing it. Caring less doesn't mean withdrawing love, it means introducing balance. It means loving without losing, giving without depleting, helping without drowning. It's the ability to walk away from things that hurt you, even if you care deeply. It's the strength to say, I love you, but I also love me. And that kind of love, the one that includes self-respect, lasts longer, burns cleaner, and hurts less. In truth, the world often praises those who overcare, the ones who always show up even when they're falling apart, the ones who never say no, who never complain, who absorb everyone's pain quietly. But behind those smiles are tired hearts. There's nothing noble about constantly abandoning yourself. Caring less is not about indifference. It's about protecting your essence. It's about refusing to let other people's chaos dictate your calm. It's about realizing that not every problem requires your emotional involvement, not every argument deserves your response, and not every relationship deserves your constant repair. When you understand that, you start preserving your energy for what truly matters, and something magical begins to happen. When you master that balance, your relationships become more genuine. You're no longer loving out of fear or obligation, you're loving from fullness. You give because you want to, not because you have to. You stop overcompensating, over-apologizing, over-explaining. You begin to radiate a quiet confidence that says, I care, but I won't collapse for you. People start respecting that energy because it's grounded. You stop attracting situations that drain you and start drawing in people who match your peace. That's the beauty of caring less. You don't lose your heart, you reclaim it. The sixth key point is that when you stop over caring, you rediscover your strength. Most people don't realize how much power they lose when they constantly seek approval, validation, or reassurance. Every time you let someone else's opinion decide your worth, you hand them a piece of your strength. You think you're being considerate, humble, or understanding, but in reality, you're quietly draining your own confidence. Over time, your inner voice becomes so faint that you can't tell whether you're making decisions from intuition or insecurity. But the moment you stop caring excessively, something incredible happens. The fog starts to lift. You begin to see yourself clearly again, not as others define you, but as you truly are. When you stop over caring, you stop begging the world for permission to exist as yourself. You stop explaining why you dream differently, why you think differently, or why you choose a path others don't understand. You realize that your purpose was never meant to be universally approved. It was meant to be personally fulfilled. And once you understand that, you stand taller, walk slower, and speak firmer. You stop seeking to prove your worth because you finally feel it within. That's when you reclaim your natural confidence. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't compare, doesn't need to be seen. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. There's something deeply liberating about detaching from the constant need to manage how others perceive you. You no longer panic when someone misunderstands your intentions or misjudges your silence. You stop over explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you anyway. You begin to recognize that not everyone will see your heart, and that's okay. Because your strength isn't in being understood by everyone. It's in being at peace with yourself, even when you're not. The less you defend your authenticity, the stronger it becomes. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just the calmness of knowing you don't need to prove anything anymore. When you free yourself from over-caring, you also free yourself from emotional exhaustion. You stop replaying conversations, stop obsessing over what someone might think, stop carrying the weight of imaginary judgments. You start conserving your energy for what actually matters: your growth, your peace, your purpose. You realize that not every opinion deserves a reaction, and not every problem deserves your involvement. Your focus sharpens. Your inner world becomes quieter. You finally have room to think, to create, to breathe. And that's when you notice your power returning. The kind of strength that comes from clarity, not control. The beautiful irony is that when you stop over-caring, you actually become more compassionate, but in a healthy way. You stop helping out of guilt and start helping out of genuine love. You stop listening out of obligation and start listening with presence. Your kindness becomes intentional, not compulsive. You no longer chase people to prove your loyalty. You simply show up where your heart feels safe. That shift transforms your energy completely. You go from being drained by others to being fueled by authenticity. And that's when people start noticing something different about you. Your calmness, your confidence, your grounded peace. True strength is not loud, it's consistent. It's the ability to stay kind without being controlled, to stay giving without being taken for granted, to stay open without losing boundaries. When you stop over-caring, you learn that it's not your job to carry every burden or fix every misunderstanding. You begin to trust the process, trust yourself, and trust that life has a rhythm beyond your control. And in that trust, your spirit becomes unbreakable. Because strength isn't found in caring about everything, it's found in caring deeply about what truly matters and letting the rest fall away. The seventh key point is that your worth isn't measured by their response. Too often, we tie our sense of value to how others react to us. Their approval becomes our mirror, their silence becomes our doubt, their praise becomes our motivation. But that's a fragile foundation to build a life on, because people's opinions are unstable. They shift with mood, convenience, and bias. One day you're admired, the next you're forgotten. One moment you're appreciated, the next you're criticized. When your self-worth is built on those unstable foundations, you spend your entire life adjusting yourself to please people who are still figuring themselves out. True confidence begins when you stop performing for validation and start recognizing your worth as something that exists even when no one notices it. When you depend on external recognition, every small rejection feels like a wound. You post something meaningful, and if it doesn't get enough likes, you question its value. You give your best effort at work, and if no one praises it, you wonder if it was worth doing. You open your heart to someone, and if they don't reciprocate, you begin to feel unworthy of love. But that's the illusion, the idea that your value increases when others see it. The truth is, their response doesn't define your essence, it only reveals their perspective. You existed with worth before anyone ever acknowledged it, and that worth doesn't vanish just because someone failed to recognize it. There's a quiet power in knowing who you are when no one is clapping. That's where real strength lives. In the unseen effort, in the silent battles, in the moments when you keep showing up even though no one's watching. The world celebrates results, but growth happens in the shadows. The applause will come and go, but the person you become in the process, that's what lasts. When you detach your self-worth from reactions, you stop chasing temporary highs and start building permanent peace. You no longer need validation to breathe, you just need alignment with your truth. Sometimes, people's lack of appreciation isn't a reflection of your inadequacy, but of their inability to understand your depth. Some people simply don't have the capacity to see your effort, your intention, or your heart. And that's okay. Their limited vision doesn't reduce your light. Not everyone is meant to recognize your value, and not everyone is equipped to receive what you bring. The tragedy is when you start dimming your brilliance just to fit into their small understanding. You don't have to explain your worth to those who are committed to misunderstanding it. Let them go, not with anger, but with awareness that their perception was never your responsibility to fix. When you truly grasp your intrinsic worth, something profound happens. You stop begging for spaces that don't value you. You stop chasing people who keep you waiting. You stop lowering your standards just to be seen. You begin to attract different kinds of energy, opportunities that respect your work, friendships that nourish your spirit, love that feels like peace, not performance. That's the power of self-worth. It changes what you tolerate. It teaches you that not being chosen is not a loss, sometimes it's protection. The world starts reflecting the value you already see within yourself. Your worth is not a scoreboard. It's not counted in numbers, compliments, or attention. It's something sacred, something unshakable. It's built in the quiet moments when you choose integrity over popularity, purpose over approval, peace over chaos. You may not always be noticed, applauded, or understood, But that doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you authentic. When you stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth, you begin to live from a place of unshakable confidence. And that's where true freedom begins. Not in being seen, but in knowing you are enough, even in silence. So here's the truth. Life becomes infinitely lighter when you stop carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. You were never meant to please the whole world. You were meant to impact it. You weren't born to shrink yourself into someone else's comfort zone. You were born to expand, to rise, to become. The moment you stop caring too much about opinions, you start caring about purpose. And that shift changes everything. You'll begin to realize that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you protect. You'll start noticing how good it feels to move through life without seeking constant approval. How freeing it is to stand firm in your truth without explaining it to anyone. The noise around you won't disappear, but it will lose its power over you. Because when you know who you are, the world's opinions become background sound. Every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, you grow stronger. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you make space for something that fulfills you. And every time you stop over caring, you reclaim a little more of yourself. Your focus, your confidence, your joy. That's the version of you the world needs, not the one constantly adjusting, but the one unapologetically aligned. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them have their opinions. They don't live your life, you do. Your peace, your energy, your happiness. They're sacred, and not everyone deserves access to them. Walk your path with quiet conviction. Stand tall in your truth. And remember, you don't need the world to agree with you when you finally agree with yourself. Because the moment you stop caring too much, you stop surviving and start living.